What's up, guys? How we doing? Little Wednesday Link action, the regular scheduled time. We haven't had these lately at the scheduled time because there's been breaking news, but got a good old 7:30, 7:35 Eastern time. Thomas, how you doing?
Doing well, doing well. We actually have an external free agent signing, Josh. Philadelphia waited until day 3 of NFL free agency, or day 1, depending on how you look at it, but they were the lone team that had not signed an external free agent, and here we are. They have made a move, and it's interesting. I don't know if I'm as excited as people are on Twitter right now. I'm sure we'll talk about that, but A.J. Dillon is the Eagles' new backup running back, or maybe third-string running back. TBD, training camp will decide that, but the Eagles officially made a signing, and that's at least a little bit exciting.
Yes. And for those that are not quite sure, 100%, as Thomas was sharing there, many different reports confirmed, but there's one on your screen for A.J. Dillon, the man himself from the Green Bay Packers. I'm kind of right there with you. We could just jump into it, I guess, with A.J. Dillon since you brought it up. There's other news to get into. We'll go through the whole gamut of everything for the Eagles. But, yeah, there's an argument to be made that, well, actually, before I even go there, the Eagles do have the largest quad running back room. They already had it, but, to add A.J. Dillon with Saquon Barkley, my gosh, that doesn't always, amount to everything, of course.
Yeah.
But can you imagine the squat competition between A.J. Dillon, Saquon Barkley, and I guess Jalen Hurts at this point? It'd be crazy. But on a serious note, I will say, A.J. Dillon, early in his career, I was a big fan. I really liked A.J. Dillon. I know a lot of people did. Then you start having some of the injury concerns. I think whenever he got injured, and over the last 2 years, 3 years even. With the neck injury last year, so like 2 to 3, it's kind of fallen off of sorts. It was really, I guess, the first year, I guess, that was kind of that that they used him sporadically, but you're like, man, coming from Boston College, all the hype, everything there. So I don't know. To me, I'm like, look, it's not the worst signing, but I'm kind of with you. I'm not over the moon about it and just going crazy. And I've seen back and forth. Some people are loving it. Some people are like, whatever. This doesn't really move the needle too much.
Yeah, I think you're in two camps. You're either Philadelphia got their next LeGarrette Blount, or you're Philadelphia got the next Rashad Penny. And I tend to lead the Penny way here.
Yeah.
It's different in the fact that Rashad Penny had lower body issues, lower body injuries, and very clearly the legs were not all there. You wanted that bruiser running back, but he had no speed. He had no pull-away ability at all. And also, Philadelphia just didn't use him. We talked about that 2 years ago. Whenever they signed Rashad Penny, it's like, okay, this week they're going to use Rashad Penny, and then they basically never did. I think A.J. Dillon, it's a neck injury that he's coming back from. It was a serious neck injury. He lost the entire 2023 season. Obviously, Philadelphia thinks that he's cleared to play. Obviously, again, it's not a lower body injury, but I do want to give a massive hesitation on people super excited about this move, because there's no guaranteed A.J. Dillon's going to make this roster, right? I really think Philadelphia will draft a running back at some point in the upcoming draft. Probably a day 3 pick, probably a later round guy, but they already kind of have a bruiser running back in Will Shipley, right? Will Shipley is not this speed, agility guy. He's kind of more the big physical back, not massive. A.J. Dillon's a bigger overall, specimen, but still, he's kind of already your physical back. And so I could see them going in the draft and trying to find the Kenny Gainwell-esque replacement, and then battling all these guys out in training camp, with Shipley for sure making the roster, and the rest of these guys basically being up in the air. So, long way to go. This always happens in free agency. When you sign somebody to a cheap one-year contract coming off of an injury, you get excited about what they were, not necessarily what they can do. But if the best case scenario were to happen here, then you do have a serious closer in Philadelphia and a serious short yard back, Josh, that you don't need because you have Saquon Barkley, but it would be really, really rough on opposing defenses in the fourth quarter to deal with Saquon Barkley going for 150 all day long. And then here comes 5 straight carries from A.J. Dillon to ice the game, if he's healthy and if he's, 90% of what he was in 2022.
Right, and that's the key part. If he's 90%, if he is, though, because the other argument is, hey, that is an incredible spell back, or Will Shipley ends up being that. I'm, again, with you, because I would say at the moment, I would go, okay, there's your RB3 that the Eagles just signed. However, as we've seen, a lot of running backs can look much better behind the Eagles' offensive line versus go name any other team that they go to. Heck, Miles Sanders getting released by the Carolina Panthers. I think we kind of saw that one coming whenever he goes to Carolina, but 4 years, 25, ends up, 180-ish carries for 600 yards total over the course of his time there. So it's a little bit easier running in a Jeff Stoutland type of offense, but that's a big question. Is he healthy? you got to wonder, or at least think to yourself that, maybe the Eagles learned their lesson with Rashad Penny. But again, it's a very low risk. Like, I haven't seen the contract details. It may be a little bit before we do. You wonder guaranteed numbers on that side. But, it's not anything major. It's not really affecting the cap from that point anyway.
Yeah, super cheap. I mean, this is going to be like probably veteran minimum. I mean, Kenny Gainwell, we don't know his contract yet. I bet Kenny Gainwell is going to get $4 or $5 more million from the Pittsburgh Steelers than what you're going to see A.J. Dillon get here. So that remains to be seen. It is a move. Howie does have a pulse in terms of external free agents. I do want to kind of talk about what they're planning on doing right now, Josh, because the news that you and I covered on our shows earlier today, and the news that really kind of rocked Eagles Twitter was, okay, you trade C.J. Gardner-Johnson. We talked about that at length yesterday. But then they tried to sign Justin Reid last night. And you're like, wait a second. Justin Reid got a 3-year, $31.5 million deal from the Tennessee Titans. Now, obviously, he took more money with Tennessee than what the Eagles offered him. But reportedly from James Palmer, the Eagles made a serious run at a safety to replace Gardner-Johnson. That was basically the same price. So are they trying to spend money? Are they trying to save money for future deals? A lot of Eagle fans are confused right now after that leak came out that Philadelphia was trying to get this person when we were told yesterday they had to get rid of Gardner-Johnson for money reasons.
Yes. Yeah, that was very strange, to say the least, because I was doing the live stream hanging out last night, and then it came out, the news from James Palmer, and I thought the same thing. Because whenever the news initially broke, we went live. We're like, hey, C.J. Gardner-Johnson, the trade. It's kind of mind-boggling. What on earth is Kenyon Green? Still don't really know there. There's a lot of question marks. If you start looking into the film and everything else and dissecting that one, trust Jeff Stoutland, but it didn't really add up. And I know that the talk was, hey, this is financial. Sure, I get that. And for people that don't fully understand it, I don't understand it to a granular detail, but there is a difference of understanding of like cash savings versus cap savings, and you can manipulate things. So it was more along the lines of a cash savings for the C.J. Gardner-Johnson deal. That was what we were told. But come on, like face value, you and I are sitting there looking at that, and we were texting offline about it as well, going like, look, are you like, is this everything? And, we can't really share anything beyond this, but we'll just say there's a source that we have that there's possibility of something else behind the scenes. That's what we'll leave it at. So still, that's kind of where we were leaning towards. And then you kind of get more of an official report to say, again, even if they weren't going to do 3 years, $31.5 million for Justin Reid, like 3 years, 27. I mean, that you had to be close to that number if you were one of the final three teams. Yeah. And then also the guaranteed money was 22.5 is what he got. So you're telling me, I mean, Philly 20? Were they going to do 20? Because C.J. Gardner-Johnson's got 10. So, if I'm C.J., like he seemed to handle it fairly well. He's like, hey, no bad blood. Moving on. I wanted to be traded to a contender. Cool. I'm in Houston. But if I'm CJ, I'm looking at that going, you got to be kidding. Unless he knew. Maybe he knew and he's just covering up like, oh, well, I don't care, move on. But that looks really shady as far as like, again, what was told, or at least the optics from what we saw, and I assume what he was being told, to then all of a sudden about face, and you're like, a couple hours after that, Justin Reid was found out to be like, oh, yeah, we traded away CD and then immediately go after Justin Reid. So a little bit strange.
Well, Philadelphia needs a safety. I mean, we talk about Justin Simmons the past couple of days. I think it's very clear that Howie is done with these one-year contracts to past their prime veterans, right? And now A.J. Dillon, obviously, we talk about one-year contracts for the veteran minimum. I'm sure Howie would do plenty of those deals for guys like A.J. Dillon. He might do some more here in the coming days. But one-year contracts for vets that are past their prime, it seems to be over. And I think, there's a great tweet from Zach Berman earlier today saying that there's a new philosophy in town. Philadelphia is trying to think more with their head instead of their heart on these post-Super Bowl rebuilds, or reloads is probably the better word. And I went back on my show today and I looked at, the 2018 free agency, right after the Super Bowl, the 2023 free agency right after the Super Bowl. And Philadelphia got burned on a lot of contracts as they went hunting for veterans who maybe they could turn into something, and none of them panned out. We're talking like Greedy Williams, Terrell Edmonds was another name that popped in there. Mike Wallace was another name that we kind of forget. Like there's a lot of people that Philadelphia tried to either bring in who are past their prime or re-sign who was past their prime. Darren Sproles they gave a contract to in 2018. He was very clearly past his prime. And so this offseason,
that's a good point.
It feels like Howie Roseman basically said, you know what? I'm drafting very well. I've drafted very well the past couple of years. all the position groups we're losing people on. I have somebody ready to go. Obviously, we got to wait and see if Jalix Hunt can be at the Josh Sweat level. I think he can. And I think he's just going to stockpile draft picks, go into the draft in a couple of weeks and say, hey, I'm going to give Vic Fangio a bunch of young players. Do with it as you will. And I think we're not going to see a lot more moves here, Josh. Like Azeez Ojulari is a name that gets thrown around a lot. That doesn't feel like it's going to happen. I mean, Trey Hendrickson's name was popping back up on Twitter today, and I'm like, they're not going for Trey Hendrickson if they're not going to pay anybody else but veterans on a one-year, minimum deal. So it's a changing of the guard, and I think Eagle fans have got to recognize what's going on here. They're trying not to make the same mistakes they did, especially in 2023 after losing the Super Bowl in 2022.
Exactly right. Yes. Howie said, how many different times in so many different ways? Basically, like, I got too emotional. I was sentimental, learned the lesson, kind of move beyond that for this season. So you're seeing the same thing. It's a youth movement. Heck, I mentioned earlier, but it's of the similar sort of like Howie is going to have 19 picks over the next 2 years, if not more. A lot. Like there may be more,
probably
depending
more
on the compensatory picks. So at least 19 over the next 2 years. And if we're going into this season, I mean, who knows what happens to Dallas Goedert, but your oldest player, your oldest starter is going to be Lane Johnson. Besides that, the only other 30-year-old plus would be Dallas Goedert, and he may not be on the roster. They're still potentially looking at moving on from him. Do they trade him? Do they cut him? What happens there? So, it'd be kind of surprising, but ultimately, then on the defensive side, Zack Baun is your oldest guy at 28 years old, just turned 28 back in December. So definitely a youth movement, a concerted effort to focus there. The CJ one, just going back real quickly, still odd, because it doesn't fit the bill necessarily for the save cash like we were talking about. And also, Justin Reed is a year older than C.J. Gardner-Johnson, so it doesn't even fit in the element to say, hey, we're going to get younger to bring in a guy here long term. I don't know. There's something else that went on, had to have, in my mind, as we said, rumors, speculation, things like that. Nothing officially reported, and we'll see. Shout out to everybody in the chat. Get to some of these super chats as well. Killer Taters with a 2. Tush Push about to go 10 yards. A play talking about A.J. Dillon. Get him on with Saquon. What do you do? Like AJ and Saquon, one on each butt cheek, and just shove Jalen for 10 yards. You don't even need.
It's not going anywhere, and they're not banning it this year. So welcome to 4th and 1. I mean, it's just going to keep happening.
Might as well. Sam the man, what's up? How's it going? Just the what's up comment, but appreciate that. Jerry Lara with the 5. Also, another Tush Push comment. So Tush Push 1st and 10 with the quads squad behind Jalen to get the first down. Again, you need it like instead of a 3rd and 2, now it's like 3rd and 4. Okay, let's line up and do the Tush Push.
Just do it twice. Yeah, easily, very simple.
Yeah, easily get it. Josh H with a 5. They re-signed VanSumeren. Now let's do Covey. I don't really want to see Coop doing punt returns anymore.
Yeah, well, that's part of our show tonight. They have basically allowed Britain Covey to be a free agent. They have not signed his restricted free agent tender, and so he is on the free agent market. Doesn't mean they can't return, but again, every single time they've lost somebody, Josh, you look on the roster, Anais Smith's right there. Now, Anais Smith is nowhere near what Britain Covey turned out to be. I thought Covey was fantastic. Real bummer that he got hurt majority of 2024. I think that he was really turning into a great punt returner and a great returner, and I think a great receiver overall. I think some teams definitely going to snatch him up. But here's Howie again going, okay, I can think with my heart because we like Britain Covey, and I could bring him back and give him a couple $1 million, or we drafted Anais Smith, whose whole MO was punt returning essentially at Texas A&M in the 5th round. He's on a rookie contract. He costs pennies on the dollar. Let's see what he's got. And at worst, you play Cooper DeJean or sign somebody else. So, yet again, they have not made a move yet, Josh, that they didn't already have a young player behind that loss of a roster spot who potentially could go ahead and fill that gap.
Yes. Yeah, they're very much calculated. None of these moves that have really shocked or surprised anyone, I believe, for the signings. The trades, those came out of left field. I mean, both of them, really. You think about Kenny Pickett, traded to the Browns. There was speculation of, like, yes, that he would trade, but to be so quickly, and for Dorian Thompson-Robinson, that to me was more surprising in how fast that occurred. And then obviously, the biggest one being C.J. Gardner-Johnson. I will say, too, because I saw a few other comments here in the comment section, also on Twitter, beware of fake news. I don't know exactly where people got this. Ben VanSumeren did not sign for $10 million. No. I mean, you
apparently
probably could have inferred that. I guess. I tried to find anything about that, and I haven't seen it. But, come on. You're smarter than that. Anybody can realize that he doesn't get signed back for $10 million.
DMs. I had Instagram
Did
DMs
you really?
telling me did we really just sign Ben VanSumeren to a $10 million contract? And I said, no. I'm like, listen, Darius
Yeah,
Slay got 10
absolutely
million
not.
bucks from the Pittsburgh Steelers. Like, there's no way we've signed BVS, who is now officially a fullback, by the way, Josh. You mentioned that on your
Yes,
Twitter. You noticed the Eagles, when they announced the re-signing, it was like, here's our fullback, Ben VanSumeren, which kind of kills my Kyle Juszczyk to the Eagles dream that I had a couple days ago. But he's a
I didn't
fullback,
mind
and
that,
looks
but
like that's what he's going to go ahead and try and do. So, interesting, but worth noting.
yeah, and doesn't have to report anymore, which is a good thing because that kind of got old.
Yeah.
Every single play, like, oh, Ben VanSumeren, he comes back in, has to report.
Right.
Probably, curious to see what number change, but won't have to deal with that. So that's a good part.
Yeah.
What probably happened? You got to imagine what probably happened is some intern was about ready to tweet or post something of Darius Slay. So it's a 1 year, 10 million, or they got it
Yeah.
mixed up and said it's an Eagles player, but it's actually been VanSumeren, but they put the 1 for 10. That there's just I mean it was, I think, fairly easy to tell, but I got a lot of messages. So again, to confirm, it's not $10 million per 1 year for a fullback, but it will be fun. I mean, you think about the running game to begin with. They had some looks for Ben VanSumeren. This suggests, I think, that you're going to get at least a little bit more usage from Ben VanSumeren. If you've signed him, it means, as he'll play special teams because he's a stud out there. He played really well on the special teams, but he won't be a linebacker. You can't imagine anyway because it's just a fullback. So the more reps, more usage as a fullback, get Saquon involved. I'm all for that. Not a bad
There you
thing.
go. Yeah. I really thought that they would keep him at linebacker and let him play a little bit of fullback. I'm sure he probably got to kind of choose what he wanted to do. A linebacker's going to be interesting, though, Josh. I mean, we talk about injuries and coming back from injuries with A.J. Dillon. Nakobe Dean coming back from a very, very brutal knee injury is not a guarantee. There's no guarantee he's ready for day one of training camp. I think he is planning on that being his number, but there can very easily, or his start date, there can very easily be setbacks. And now it looks like right now, as your roster stands, it's Zack, Baun, and Jeremiah Trotter Jr. with Dean being the 3, and then kind of like, all right, well, we'll see who's next. So there are, we keep saying Howie has a plan. He clearly does. Eventually, though, he has to execute on this plan, and whether that's all in the NFL draft, that's fine. But there are plenty of holes that they need to go ahead and start plugging, and that's why I think we keep kind of waiting on pins and needles. Today, tomorrow, Friday, Saturday, like, okay, when's the next move? When are you getting that next safety, right? When are you going to add another edge rusher? When are you going to go ahead and add an extra linebacker?
Yeah.
Maybe it's all in the draft. Maybe it's not, but we'll see.
Yeah, that is the fascinating part to me because, again, much like with Justin Reed, we don't get the report till after the fact. And oh, hey, they're actually interested in a safety. Okay, that's shocking, especially after the trade. But same thing for, linebacker, other positions. We may not know until afterwards, a few weeks later, and it says, oh, the Eagles were close to, name your player. So I am with, I believe that you need to have somebody else. But at the same time, if Oren Burks didn't get $5 million, 2 years, $5 million, 2 years, that to me screams. Because, I mean, again, say what we will about C.J. Gardner-Johnson, playmaker, absolute ball hawk, great on the field. I don't know if it's a distraction, if there's drama, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But Oren Burks was not those same type of vibes. So to me, that just suggests like, hey, we appreciate you, but good luck. You can have a bigger role. We're not going to offer you, or we're going to match it. But Oren, took a look and said, hey, I'm already a Super Bowl champ. Do I get an opportunity to go play more snaps in Cincinnati? And there you go. But I mean, $5 million that's for 2 years. That's nothing. That hardly affects your cap at all. So
no, I know
you're probably sitting tight with the linebacker options or someone who is extra cheap as far as that goes. I don't know.
If you really wanted to put your conspiracy theory hat on before we get to these super chats here, I saw someone say that Thomas is bringing the conspiracy theories out tonight. If you wanted to get crazy, right, you could put the hat on and say Philly is not signing anybody. They're saving all this money because they want to go all in for Trey Hendrickson, right? They wanted Myles Garrett. Garrett eventually went back to the Browns, and so now they pivot to Trey Hendrickson. They're not making any moves with anybody besides cutting people and letting people go until they try and get Trey Hendrickson, just because they haven't done anything else. That's what's just so weird is how quiet that they've been. Now I think the validity of that is probably like 5%. It's probably not true. But it does make you wonder, right? Like we keep saying they do have money. And I know that the going theory right now is, well, they want to make sure they have money for Jalen Carter, right? You want to make sure you have money for Cooper DeJean or Quinyon Mitchell, which is fine. But Jalen Carter is probably getting paid next year. Probably. They could technically wait if they wanted to, but probably getting paid next year. Cooper and Q, the quickest they get paid is 2027. Like, I mean, it's not anytime soon. So you got to pay everybody. You got to pay everybody. They have everybody else under contract who actually matters. And so unless they're, deep in negotiations with Cam Jurgens, or they're really trying to bring Mekhi Becton back, which we can talk about, I don't think it's going to happen. You do wonder what they want to do with all the money for 2025, right? So I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, lots of interesting areas to go with. I mean, obviously, Jalen Carter is going to get a bag, and some others will get a decent amount. But even still, yeah, you're just looking at kind of moving this on. Reed Blankenship, I've seen get thrown out there. I think Reuben Frank was saying, like, yeah, they very much like him. They'll probably try to do something, whether that's this season, next season. Who knows? But again, like, how much are we really talking about? He's been solid, but, I don't know if you're talking about top money for a safety for Reed. Same thing for Cam Jurgens, as you mentioned, Nolan Smith, for potential the following season. So there's some guys out there, but yeah, it doesn't feel like it's like an extraordinary amount. If Keely Ringo plays up to a certain level, if Sidney Brown, so you could eventually work your way or talk yourself into it to be like, oh, okay, that does make some sense. But that's a lot of guys you're still waiting on to say, are they legit going to live up to that full potential, or are you moving on? And maybe this is the point where, Howie says youth movement, 2 or 3 guys that are going to have to start or play significant snaps. It's still a possibility, but it's asking a lot. And sometimes we've seen it pay off. Sometimes it hasn't. So it'll be curious.
And again, we've said it every single day over the past 4 days, right? The current iteration of the Eagles roster, without another cornerback to compete with Keely Ringo, without another safety to compete with Sidney Brown, without another edge rusher, without another guard, this currently is still the best roster in the National Football League, and still the best roster for sure in the NFC. I'm sure you could argue Buffalo, or you could argue this team or that team, but this is still a very loaded team. And I was texting a buddy of mine because everyone's hitting me up on my phone whenever the bad things happen to the Eagles, I get a lot of text. When they win the Super Bowl, I get very little text. So I get people saying, do you see all the Eagles losing these people? This is really bad. And I said, okay, so maybe instead of 34-0 in the Super Bowl versus the Chiefs, it's 34-17, right? Instead of 55 points against the Washington Commanders, it's 41, right? They were leagues ahead of everybody in the playoffs. Now, they might take a step back a little bit on defense, which is still a question mark. What's 10 points given up extra, right? They're still winning a ton of games. They're still very feared in the NFC.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. If someone was asking, hey, do you think that we could be even close to the same type of defense that we were last year with these moves? It's like, absolutely. There's still so many more opportunities, even if this is the core group, and then you just add with some supplemental draft picks and a couple free agents or UDFAs or, anybody like that. It for sure. Like you could say top 10, absolutely. Top 10 defense. Top 5 still feels very realistic, and you could even be the number 1 defense. We saw guys take strides like crazy in Coop and Q. Do you get that again? Who knows? That doesn't happen every single year, but I don't think it's out of the ordinary to say, that is still a possibility with the guys you have. Shout out to a couple of super chats, so I hit on those. Real Talk with the G, though, gifting 10 Philly Special Show memberships. Let's go.
There you go.
Appreciate that. Everybody getting on the action there. Crush Melatonin. Breaking news, Philly Eagles GM Howie Roseman put into concussion protocol with the beer can. So there's the image. I saw this floating around a lot more often, which you knew this was going to get turned into some sort of meme or anything like that.
You knew it was,
but I don't know. The first envisioned part was, hey, a C.J. Gardner-Johnson trade and check Howie for a concussion. It was more so like, what a baller move. He's got the cigar in his mouth and everything there. I get it. People are still wondering. It's hard to fully comprehend what his plan is, but he's got one. We say it all the time. He's playing 4D chess. He thinks so many different moves ahead. It's not a knee-jerk reaction. It was at least thought out. It was planned for a while. I don't know how long, but it wasn't a like, oh, wake up today and go, you know what, we're trading CJ. That's it. Like there may have been a moment earlier where, okay, we're going to start looking into this, but in my mind, it couldn't have been, oh, today. Like, here you go, make this move. Carlos with a 5. Appreciate that. Gentlemen, salute. Okay, Howie trades all the picks this draft, and we get Carter. I love these. Warren,
come on, guys.
And Emanwari. I think that'll be an even exchange from what we lost.
Are we the only ones drafting? Are they canceling it for the other 31 NFL teams out there? Emanwari is a very real possibility. Okay, Starks is in a large contingent to the Georgia Pro Day today.
For sure.
Here, an hour and a half north of me in Atlanta right now, up in Athens. So they easily could get Starks Emenwari, any of the other edge rushers, the Ole Miss guys, anything like that. I think they might have to move up for, the USC safety. I think Malachi Stark's probably got to move up a little bit there too. But they
Yeah.
do have the ammo, Josh, to go from like a 32 to a 27, right? That kind of move is very possible. 32 to anywhere in the teens is most likely not going to happen because you would give up a lot to go. Even past 23 would probably be a pretty big king's ransom. So,
Yeah.
you're hovering around 32. Your guy is Malachi Starks. You're starting to think, oh, he might go at 27, go to 26, good to go. So, they have the ammo to do so. I think Howie's going to go crazy in this draft, as he normally does, up and down, up and down, up and down,
Yeah.
all throughout the rounds.
Plenty of trading. I would absolutely agree. It's fun to think about. It's fun to play out the scenarios. Abdul Carter is the most ridiculous, never ever going to happen. Warren is still not going to happen, but it's at least not to the extreme. You'd have to give up a lot of draft picks to move up. But then, as you said, with Emenwari or some of the other safeties, I could certainly see you sit there, you wait, you make a move to try to go get somebody. Howie does have the ammunition there. Peyton with a 2. Did BG officially retire? I don't. Did we actually officially get that?
No, he has not.
We haven't seen the press conference, like Kelsey got. So I don't know. I feel like he's still done, but the fact that he's, not had the full-blown send-off, that seems to, I don't know, suggest maybe he's thinking about running it back one more season.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because he also tore his tricep in the Super Bowl, or retore his tricep in the Super Bowl. So you would assume, I really thought that's kind of the nail in the coffin. But tricep injuries aren't that long, right? You could be fully healed from a tricep with very little chance of re-tearing by the time training camp starts. I mean, it's so far in the future in late July or early August. So if he wants to run it back, that would help. We keep talking about the Chris Long. I mean, I think every offseason, I think I say the words Chris Long, esque edge rusher, right? The Chris Long prototype becoming signed to Philadelphia. He would be just that. He basically was a better version of that early on in 2024. The guy was like our best edge rusher until Nolan Smith started to kind of turn things on, and obviously he got BG got hurt. So I'd be fine with him coming back. We haven't heard anything yet, so he's probably mulling it over.
Yeah, and he gets to rehab with Nolan Smith. So how about that? They both ended up doing similar things. They're both similar types of players. People being like, oh, Nolan's going to replace BG to be that same type of player. And go figure. They both tore their triceps, played through it. Kind of ridiculous. But hopefully they can rehab quickly. As you said, not usually the most extensive rehab for that type of surgery, or for the, and/or surgery, but the rehab. Abram with a 2. QB1, RB1, RB2 can squat about 2,000 pounds combined.
I think so. Yeah, right. Sure. I mean, we're talking like 600.
I think we're well over that, aren't we?
600, and I'm sure AJ can do 600, and they're all probably like 650, right? What was it? What was Jalen's in that famous Oklahoma video? It was 6 something, right?
I think it was 650, wasn't it?
I
think it was somewhere around there. Yeah, light work. Sure.
600. It was 600.
600? Okay.
Yeah, and Saquon can do more, right? I'm sure Saquon could do 650, although he said that he squats a lot lighter now just due to the fact
for sure.
that,
yeah.
That's...
I think if they legit were like, hey, let's go for it, I think we're talking about significantly. I'm not saying like way over 2, but I think significantly over 2,000 if they were legit trying and going for it.
Yeah.
Helps for the tush push, as we said. Bill Schrader with a 2. Who do you think the Eagles draft in the first round? Could be lots of different guys.
It's a lot of different guys.
Safety as of today, but
we're not at the point in the draft process yet where we have kind of the top 32 ironed out. Now the teams do, right? The teams have their boards. They obviously need to have people into Philadelphia to get their top 30 visits. That'll move you up and down the board based on how you do. But we, in as a fans or media, whatever you want to call us, I don't think we have our full boards kind of out yet. I think I have a pretty good idea of what the top 10 would look like right now if I was drafting it. But when you get late in the first round, there are plenty of players who either fall to the first round you thought would go there. Cooper DeJean's a perfect example. Philly was convinced DeJean was going to go, before they even picked last year at like 22, and then he fell all the way to 43 or 45, whatever the number was. And then there are plenty that should go in the second round that hop into the early or the late first round, right? Is it a quarterback like a Jackson Dart this year? Who knows? So there are a lot of names out there that I think are going to grow on a lot of Eagle people's minds in the coming weeks, but I think Malachi Starks and Nick Emenwari are the 2 names that are leading the clubhouse right now because I'd be surprised if they just give the keys to Sidney Brown. They're going to let him compete, but giving the keys to him, I'd be very curious to see if that's going to be the actual game plan.
Yeah, and you know that the rest of the defense, or I shouldn't say the rest, but the majority, the Philly Dogs, of course, are going to have their pick with Malachi Starks. So,
Well, yeah.
if he is available, but yeah, I'm curious. Do they go out and sign somebody? There's a couple options. Do you go with a Justin Simmons I mentioned, and I know that's like the talk about it all the time, and it's a regurgitation from last year and same thing. But it was a little interesting because he said at the high on his list, reunion with Vic Fangio and Christian Parker. So for some reports I remember last year or all the way even a couple years ago that Simmons didn't really appreciate Fangio or did not want to play with him again, confirmed by multiple people. That's an interesting statement because if you don't really want to play with him, you don't have to say that. You could just be like, yeah, possibility, appreciated his game, Christian Parker, big fan, blah, 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 but we'll see. Like, just leave it at that. But to say high on his list, I don't know, a little bit odd, strange. Money talks, as we know. So even Myles Garrett saying he wants to compete for a championship and then say yes to his contract. So, people always go back on that if the Eagles offer enough. But then there's Julian Blackmon, a couple of different guys. But I feel like there's I would say slightly greater than 50% chance that the Eagles sign a veteran safety because of the whole Justin Reed thing now. So we'll leave it at that.
Yeah, but we did this last year though, right? Because it was this whole idea of, well, surely they're going to sign Justin Simmons, and then for like 3 weeks we said, well, Justin Simmons is in the maybe about after the draft, Justin Simmons, and then it never happened, right? And so you just think that they would do it right now because who else are you waiting on? Especially with the Justin Reed thing falling. You're like, okay, next logical safety that's available. Damar Hamlin's name was out there for like 15 hours, and then he signed with the Buffalo Bills. And you're like, okay, so we're, crossing off people on our list here and not much left. So, maybe they don't like him. Although Justin Simmons went on a podcast or whatever that show was and literally was like, I want to be an Eagle without saying those words exactly. But he was like, the Eagles are great. I love Vic Fangio. Man, that's top of my list. You're like, goodness gracious, this guy's like begging to be an Eagle, and they still haven't signed him. So I don't know. I don't know.
Besides that, shout out to Anthony. I don't know if he's still on here. So Anthony DeBono a second ago, but he had mentioned Marcus Williams with the Ravens as a potential. So like, there's another one maybe that you throw out there as a guy to go get. But there's just so much speculation. But I still just say if they were trying to get a backup or trying to get that position backfilled with CJ being traded, then I just don't envision that Howie's going to, well, you know what, we couldn't get somebody, so we're going to go ahead and draft. They might just say, well, that didn't work out. Okay, now let's just see if Sidney can be the guy. But I don't know. I don't like Justin Reed. Sure, that'd been good. I would have been happy with Justin Reed. But it's also not like you miss out on Justin Reed and I say, oh, well, that was the only option. Like I go get Justin Simmons, do that, or Julian Blackmon. Be happy with that scenario. Marcus Williams, just some sort of vet. I'll just say that.
They still at least have the luxury, Josh, before we get to these super chats, of they've seen Sidney Brown. Vic Fangio has seen Sidney Brown, and they know what they have in him. And so if Vic Fangio gives you the sign-off based on his track record of this past season with Zack Baun, then Sidney Brown's the guy, and you have the next Brian Dawkins, right? I mean, I don't know. But they at least have in-house guys that they clearly feel very, very confident in. Maybe Sidney Brown's one of them.
Yeah. I mean, we're still high on him. We talked about him for a number of times, but he's got the tools. The tools in his body, is how he would say. Can he play in Fangio's system and play well? Brandon, what's up? Happy birthday to your son Ian, 14th birthday.
Hey, okay, happy birthday,
March
Ian.
26th. That's a little early, but yeah, he's asked if we get
early.
a shout out for a birthday. Happy birthday, happy early birthday.
There you go. What does he want? Hopefully it's Eagles gear, right? Come on.
Surely, I mean that can
That's
be
all
the
I
only
wanted at
right
14.
answer.
Yeah, that's all I still want, honestly. So
it's just keep on stockpiling it. That's what happens. David with a 5. Ronnie Gadsden out of Syracuse is a strong tight end replacement. Go Birds. There's a name to keep an eye on.
There's like 7 tight ends in this year's draft. That could make sense. There's probably like 4 to 3 like really good ones. And there's probably 7 that you could go, here's day 1 guy, a day 2 guy, a day 3 guy. One of them is going to be an Eagle. That feels very clear. Although I was educated by Anthony DeBona today, as I usually am because I follow him on Twitter. I thought that they would try and trade Goddard sooner rather than later. They trade Goddard pre-June 1st, Josh. It's like an $11 million cap hit. If it's post-June 1st, it's 5.2. So
yes,
I thought a Goddard trade, if they were going to do it, was like any day now. And now clearly it is probably going to be delayed if they're going to do it, which probably means they're just going to extend him to something a little more team-friendly.
Yeah, try to shuffle the money around, make a cap hit make sense and everything. So makes sense. That's where I would figure as well. Josh H with a 5. All of the criticism that Philly is getting is almost identical to the criticism of the Chiefs the past couple seasons. It does feel similar in a sense. I mean, the Super Bowl win, you come off of that, people are ready to see you get knocked down, like, oh, you're losing these guys, or are you going to be able to get back to that same level? I could see it from that side. It's not identical. I said almost identical, but that's fair.
I mean,
for a champion,
you can't. At least we're not, having everyone complain about the refs giving us games, right? That's probably the one big difference there in terms of us and the Chiefs. But, sure, that's fine.
We've got the tush push. People complain about that, not the refs necessarily, but the tush push.
True.
Jordan Torres with a 5. Didn't we say last year if the defense was above average, we still win a ton of games because of the offense's potential? Doesn't that still apply now?
Yes, I literally thought about this earlier when Josh was saying if we have a top 10 defense, and I forgot to say it. All we said, I think I'm on camera like 10 times at this time last year saying, as long as it's a top 15 defense, this team's going to be nuts. And then it was like the number 1 defense, and they were, obliterating people. So 100%. If the Eagles have the 11th best defense in the National Football League in 2025, they're likely playing in an NFC Championship game, if not playing in a Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. If they have the 6th best defense in the league in 2025, it's going to look very similar to what it was this past season. Yeah. Maybe even a little better because everybody's in year 2 of a Fangio system. So, yes, 100%. The 8th best defense, the 12th best defense, anything 15 and up, and Philadelphia's sitting pretty good because the offense is going to be really, 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 really good. Yeah, and it goes without saying, obviously. But, you repeat this year, number 1 defense, and you get a blowout in the Super Bowl again. So, yeah.
AJ with a 2. Simply tell Carter to say no to any team. I mean,
one way to do it.
Like
31 other teams, I guess.
That
so
doesn't really. It's not legit. I'd love to think it's not actually a possibility of him happening. Right? He's getting money, getting paid as well. There's a big difference between where you get drafted. Shaq with a 10. What do you guys actually think of Starks? A buddy of mine that's followed Starks since Jefferson High School always tells me that he's never been consistent in coverage and has trouble with the fast guys.
Yeah, coverage a little bit, but he's kind of supposed to be in the C.J. Gardner-Johnson mold of being a cover guy because all safeties must cover, but he also has to get into the box and hit people and make open field tackles. And Gardner-Johnson he was always good at that. He kind of struggled a little bit, but then last part of the season, he was fantastic in the open field. All the Eagles got much better at tackling. So I think that's what you're more looking at from Malaki Starks. And I live in Atlanta, so all my friends went to UGA. All of them rave about Malaki Starks. They love the guy. They think he's just like the best safety to come out of the draft in a very long time, which, there's pretty good safeties that came out of the draft, but they all think he's fantastic. So I'm all for it. We give the seal of approval for a Malaki Starks to Philadelphia, especially at 32.
Yeah, and it will be interesting too because Anthony, again, shout out to Anthony DeBona because he's on top of just about everything, but he knows pictures and photos of Eagle scouts and who they're looking at and everything else there.
Right.
But he mentioned or brought up a great point, the fact that Malaki Starks, how he tested at the combine, keep an eye out for the draft situation of would he potentially fall because athleticism-wise, it was not quite where he was wanting.
Yeah.
Again, doesn't always lead up to that, but could be an opportunity where, he's still available, as we were talking about earlier, 27, you trade up, you go get him. But I'm with you, not as much of a concern from that side. Spike with a 2, thoughts on Elijah Arroyo. I can't say it. Arroyo for the Eagles? There we go. That's a difficulty for that name.
Yeah, that was a hard. Go ahead.
I honestly, I guess like I don't know. I haven't gotten into it in depth enough to know one way or the other. So I haven't looked into Elijah. I can't even pronounce his name, as you can tell. So I probably would have had more insight there. But yeah, that's pretty much all I've got to offer.
All you got to know about him is he's massive. He's like 6'6" or something like that. Like he is a ginormous tight end. So, and he was really in that Cam Ward high flying Miami offense. Probably, is that what Philadelphia wants? Do you want a massive body? Do you want more of a kind of quicker, smaller receiver? I don't know what they're looking at for tight end, but he's obviously in that group of 7 we talked about earlier of really good tight ends that Philadelphia could, take a peek at.
There we go. Muhammad with 5. Brandon Lee's, I think I already hit this earlier, but making sure that we saw it. So Brandon Lee's son's birthday's coming up. Happy birthday to him. Happy birthday again to Ian, I believe was the name. Frank with a 5. Howie's got 18 picks through the first 5 rounds this draft and next. I don't think people realize how crazy that is, especially with Howie's draft history. That is so dangerous. The fact that he can move around. We were mentioning that a couple different ways, but that's whether you want to go get a guy in the first round, you want to be active in the middle rounds. He could certainly restock, and we've said this before. In those first 3 rounds, he's almost batting 1,000. You look at just decisions in general. Okay, look, C.J. Gardner-Johnson, maybe he regrets that one. Again, maybe it's another time of moving on from C.J. and it's like, I shouldn't have done that. But you don't hit every decision. The draft, he has been in the first 3 picks of each draft over the last 4 drafts, 11 for 12, and you could argue 12 for 12. So give him that many picks. I mean, we're talking about if he keeps it up, of course, but another 6 guys, another 7 guys that you add to the roster, and you have to backfill these other situations. You have other contracts coming up. It's a perfect scenario, and the reason they continue to be good and surpass expectations and be relevant is that many good draft picks and hitting on those guys that early. So, it's dangerous.
Yeah.
David with a 5. Y'all are getting me fired up. Can't wait to see Q, Coop, Baun on year 2 with Fangio. How soon is September? There we go.
It's going to be faster than you think. It's going to be faster than you think. Once you get past the draft, you got a couple months of a little slowness with a little OTA sprinkled here and there. Training camp, blink, and training camp's going to be here. So it'll be quick.
Yes, it will. I like the optimism, though, from Dave. There we go. We need some of that.
We needed some today, yeah.
Understandable for some things that either have happened, haven't happened, what we're waiting on.
Yeah.
Emily, again, yes, I know, still sad about CJ. Someone please make it make sense. There's something else that we've not been told officially, I believe, and Eagles trying to go a different route with a different safety. Moving on.
Yeah.
Mike with a 2. Michael Mayer, a possibility for tight end. You never know. We've had speculation of a trade. Anthony threw out an idea of during the draft, you swap picks.
Okay.
What do you say? 2025 5th round pick flipped for a 2026 4th round pick, and then another 2025 5th round pick traded for Michael Mayer. Because again, you have a million 5th round picks.
Yeah, you have 7.
So you just go ahead and trade off a couple. I would do that, especially if you don't have your answer and they're looking at it going, for sure, we want to move away from Dallas Goedert, because then you do the draft. Right. That probably signifies based on, who they draft or what move they make for tight end, if they're going to keep Goddard or if they're going to trade him away, try to release on that side. But I don't mind that. Let's see, a couple more super chats. We're coming up on to wrap it up here with us. Shaq with a 2. Man, aren't we blessed to have Howie? He's got it. That's a little bit of a different tune, I will say, than what I've heard a lot. It's like I trust Howie, but what is he doing? That one. Yeah, a little more optimistic. He's earned it.
I do wonder what the Howie haters right now, what their perfect offseason was. Was it Milton? Was it Sweat? Was it Baun and Becton? Was it, because I think in a lot of our minds it was Baun, Becton, and Isaiah Rodgers, which a report came out this afternoon that they made a run at Isaiah Rodgers and then didn't want to pay him the money, which is interesting. Right. So I think Rodgers was kind of this tipping point for a lot of people because they really wanted him to be back. And then when he didn't come back for $8 million of guaranteed money, they're like, what are we doing here? So I think if it would have been Baun and Rodgers, people would have said, and then A.J. Dillon, they'd be like, what a great offseason. This is exactly what we're hoping for. So Baun, Rodgers, and Becton, and everyone's like, Howie's a genius, how he did it again. So I think that's what people were hoping for. I think really it was Isaiah Rodgers, because I think a lot of people, thanks to you putting Isaiah Rodgers on the map, having him on your show way back when, really fell in love with the guy and thought that he was the future, and they were kind of grooming him to be the next starting cornerback, and wasn't the case.
Yeah, he felt the same way too. Obviously, he posted the goodbye letter, and then it was kind of funny because I know a lot of people saw it, but AJ trolling him, being like, man, bro was here for 6 months and already sending a goodbye letter. But that's what it meant to, for Zay to be a part of the community. And as I said previously, I believe he's still going to be at the Smitty softball tournament. So he had the invitation. He's got to defend his home run crown. So his home run derby crown. So surely he'll be out there. Well wishes to him in Minnesota. Yes, we were obviously bummed, the personal connection of the show and all that. But yeah, I think we said, look, you signed Baun, everything else is gravy beyond it. But if you get Baun and Becton, then to me that's successful, even if you don't have the others. Because yeah, you've got some question marks, but Those three, absolutely. But even without it, even with just those two, kind of some plug and play, you got to see what Kelee Ringo has at some point, and especially if they believe in him, which multiple reports had come out about the Eagles believe in Kelee Ringo more than what people I think anticipate or understand. So, it's time for him to get a chance at least. You maybe draft somebody, some competition there.
Yeah.
I don't hate it. Christopher with a 2. Trade up or down this draft? And if so, for who?
Both.
Yes,
we don't know.
All over the place.
We really don't know for who yet. Ask us that question about 2 weeks from now. We'll give you like first round, second round, third round. Like we'll have all our guys kind of picked out. But for who is hard. I think that they will honestly probably stay put at 32 or go back. That's kind of the Howie way. Unless they love somebody, right? I don't know if they have like a Quinyon Mitchell in this draft. If they're just like whatever it takes, So probably back, and then they probably come up in round 2 and 3 would be my guess.
Yes. Yep. There's going to be all over the place. Very, very accurate, I believe. We've seen, 7, 8 trades? I don't know how many trades it is, but we'll see a ton from Howie. Notorious with a 5. I get Peeps upset about CJ, but we got options. Emma Warry, Malachi Starks, Makuba, Xavier Watts. I mean, pick your poison, all solid options at safety.
Yeah. I mean, it's not a very strong draft overall. Last year was considered like one of these drafts where there's 45 worthy first rounders. This year they're saying there's like 15. But there's a lot of really good second rounders, and this could be the draft where you get your guy in the second round. He turns out to be a really good player.
Yeah. And not that it's all your eggs in one basket because we talked about Sidney Brown, but we've seen instances where even last year, for example, the Eagles began to make it very evident, very obvious. It's like, okay, they're going to draft a corner. Like they will draft a corner. How early? That was the question. Will they do it first round? No one could imagine 2 back-to-back rounds, but it does start to feel like, okay, you see a lot of depth there at the safety spot. There is a need now, whether or not they actually go and get a veteran. I think you could absolutely see one of those guys mentioned off the board or, like we've said, to Howie trading up and getting it.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, real quickly, as we're about to wrap here, we can probably end on this super chat here. Before I get to it, I will say, again, just for people, questions confirming officially, yes, Darius Slay headed to the Steelers along with Gainwell. Yes. Headed to the Steelers. Those were rumored or confirmed, but now official, obviously, with free agency and the signings happening. But to wrap up here, Shaq with a 2. Any light on the Becton situation? Getting nervous.
Well, there's been conflicting reports, right? There was one report saying that there's still hope, and then there's one report from Adam Schefter today on the Fanatics saying that they're going to lose him. So I would prepare to lose Mekhi Becton is what I would say. I know that people think that there's a chance. I do not buy the idea that they just got Kenyon Green in this Gardner Johnson trade. Like, oh, an extra guard. It was like, hey, give us Kenyon Green because we're probably losing Mekhi Becton.
Yeah, that's not implausible. I'm leaning into the "there's hope" statement from Ian Rappaport. So, pick your poison or choose who you believe, if Ian Rappaport or Adam Schefter, on who this is going to be. Because, yes, it's still on the table, according to Rappaport. Schefter, especially the way that he said it, too. If you didn't hear it or see it, he's talking and almost just drops it as a, when it happens, like you're going to get another conditional pick. So, either one, you got both sides there. I am hopeful, and the reason that I'm hopeful is, again, I trust Jeff Stoutland, but, man, the more that you look at Kenyon Green's game, I know that, we've seen crazy things happen. We've seen Jordan Mailata, but it doesn't always happen like that. We see Mekhi Becton. Yeah. It doesn't always happen like that. I don't know that and shout out to Johnny Page, too. He did a great breakdown, Bleeding Green Nation and the Pinpool podcast, but I just don't know that dude's going to be your end. Now, you have Tyler Steen, so, maybe there's your answer on that side, but I keep looking at that. And I'm going, man, there's got to be something that they're at least, because it's taken a little while longer, so that at least has to mean they're somewhat in play. To what extent, who knows? But yeah, I'm not feeling. Let's just say I'm not feeling as good about it as I was pre-free agency, based on all the reports of Becton wants to be in Philly, potentially take a discount, the knee concerns, maybe the market isn't what he wants, all this other stuff. Now I'm not at that, I think I was 75% range. I'm probably more of a, I don't know, throw a random number, 40% out there, 35%
I'm at 30.
for Becton, somewhere around there. Yeah.
It's more likely he leaves than not.
Yeah. we've sadly, I think, dropped down to that number, but there's still a chance. We're saying
Sure.
there's a chance.
And we'll go live as soon as they do.
We will, yes. Reminder, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe, turn those notifications on, because as soon as it does happen, we'll speak it into existence. We will be going live. All right, there we go. Ran through the super chats. Appreciate hanging out. That one flew by because there's a million different things to talk about. And at least the Eagles being somewhat active. IBH, member for 3 months, says, thanks, guys. We appreciate y'all. Could not do it without you. More videos, more news, everything else coming, so stay tuned. And as always, go Birds.
Go Birds.